The NFL has descended on downtown Indianapolis, just in the shadows of Lucas Oil Stadium, home of the Colts. It'll be alive with prospects running and doing drills in just a couple of days. We are next to Lucas Oil Stadium in the Convention Center, where various NFL types have been talking to the media. Welcome to Sports4CLE, live from the NFL Scouting Combine. I'm Dave Bacon on Radio Row. Browns General Manager Andrew Berry met with the media today. He was asked about the difference between having a young team and winning in 2026.
You know, Chris, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that youth equals, lack of performance. I think two of the three youngest teams this past year were Philadelphia and Green Bay. I think, we're a little bit unique in the NFL where it's not like, baseball where a team, a prospect has to be in the farm system for 7 years before they hit the big league level. There is certainly an adjustment period for young players, but we want to have high expectations for guys that, that come into our program to be role players, to ascend into starters, and I think we saw that this past year with this past draft class. We're still, building out this new core. I think also, roster spots, they're commodities. And I think one of the things that we want to continue to lean into that we did last year is having roster spots open for young players to contribute and grow and play, as opposed to necessarily maybe blocking them for, a short-term solution, based on where our team is currently.
Step one for the Browns in 2026, building that roster out. It begins with free agency in just a couple of weeks. Andrew Berry asked, how aggressive will the Browns be in free agency this year?
I would anticipate that there's at least the chance that we would be a little bit more aggressive more aggressive than last year. But it'll be targeted and opportunistic. I think, realistically, we may be one more offseason away from being like hyper aggressive in that window. But if there's something that fits us, fits our roster, fits our timeline, then it's certainly a swing we'll take.
Without question, one of the priorities for Andrew Berry and the Browns has to be rebuilding the offensive line. Joel Bitonio still hasn't decided if he's coming back. There could be 5 new offensive linemen in 2026. The question becomes, how does Andrew Berry approach rebuilding that offensive line?
Thinking about the offensive line, I actually think what Chicago and what Ryan Poles did last year is a really nice model. If you think about it, they did a combination of internal development, veteran additions, and draft, right? You had Darnell Wright, who he really came into his own at right tackle this past year. They traded for Joe Thuney. They traded for Jonah Jackson. They signed Dahlman in free agency, and then they drafted Ozzie Dean Trapilo in the second round. So it's a nice mixture of like youth and experience, and I think that, we would look to take a similar approach if the player markets line up for us.
You will hear plenty about 6 and 24. Those are the draft picks the Browns have in the first round. So the question for Andrew Berry and the Browns to figure out between now and the draft, do you draft for need or do you draft the best available player?
I think you've heard me say over the years that the draft, it's really for like highest sustainable impact. And that's not to say that need or positional value doesn't have some role in that. But at the same time, it's not like you're just going to match your picks to the best of whatever. I mean, I think about a year ago at this time, I wouldn't have guessed that the draft would have played out positionally the way that it did in 2025. And you have to be flexible, you have to be adaptable in terms of where the player pool and where the talent pool is. I think the good thing about this coaching staff, really in all 3 phases, is they are very adaptable to using your best player. So you have to be open to the fact that it may not look exactly the way that you'd envision it or that you'd hope that it would look coming out of it.
Offensive line is without question a huge concern for the Browns. Another concern, quarterback. So what do the Browns want to see from second-year quarterback Shedeur Sanders?
I think the biggest thing that we want to see from Shedeur is just continued growth. I think he grew a lot from start 1 to start 7. I think certainly playing more efficiently, not putting the ball in harm's way as much would be important. While maintaining the ability to produce out of structure and generate explosive plays. You're not going to see all of that in the upcoming months because we're not on the field. So the biggest thing that he can do is learn the new offense. Get in with the coaching staff once our offseason program starts. Continue to work on his body physically, and then make strides when we actually get on the grass.
Browns could very well add a quarterback either via free agency or in the draft. The question becomes, what about the quarterback competition and Deshaun Watson?
I think any player on our roster we would want to compete. Like, we believe in competition at every spot. That's no different than quarterback. Deshaun's been working really hard. He's been working his tail off, and like I said, we're excited to get going in April with all of our players across the roster, because competition is something that we really believe in.
Ideally, would you guys like to head into training camp knowing who your QB1 is, or at least having a good idea, or do you envision, let's say it's Deshaun and Shedeur, do you envision heading into camp with an open sort of quarterback competition?
I think either scenario is fine, Mary Kay. I don't know that I would handicap one versus the other. I think we have to be flexible to both situations, but neither scare me.
Another area that the Browns will need to improve is wide receiver. Andrew Berry was asked what the Browns are looking for in a wide receiver potentially in this draft in the first round, as well as the struggles Jerry Jeudy had in 2025.
I think, honestly, it's probably the same things that are attributed to the offense as a whole. I mean, and look, you do see this from time to time with players across the NFL. I remember, Jeremiah's first year to his second year. You can look at what happened with Brian Thomas down in Jacksonville. Actually, I was thinking about this, they were the two first ballot Pro Bowlers in 24 a year ago, and both of those guys had down years this year. So it does happen. But we have a lot of confidence in Jerry. For a guy to produce how he did at 25 years old, break all the records, and play to his ability, we think that if we can make our offense a bit more operational, we would expect him to bounce back. I think it's simple. Hey, get open, catch the ball, make plays with the ball in your hands. Don't really necessarily care how a guy does it, but look, we all want receivers who can get open, catch it, and create after they have in their hands.
Let's turn our attention a little bit to the defensive side of the ball. The Browns announced today that Dom Capers, legendary defensive coordinator and one-time head coach, will be brought aboard to help first-time defensive coordinator Mike Ruddenberg call the defense. Andrew Berry talked about Ruddenberg and that defense.
He's very knowledgeable. I think he's unique from the perspective that he understands what an attacking front system looks like, but if you also look at what he did in Atlanta, he was a big part of that group, taking over a defense that was about as far away from attack as you can, and almost creating this hybrid that was really effective with the players that they had. So between that, his coverage background, his understanding of all three levels of the defense, and when you guys get a chance to meet him, he's high octane now. He's very, very high energy. It'll go really well.
One final news today. Andrew Berry asked about Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, missed all of last year with that neck injury. Was asked what it looks like, what the future looks like for JOK.
I'd say this. We are dealing with Jeremiah from month to month. I'm not necessarily overly optimistic, but there isn't a hard deadline for which we have to make some type of binding decision.
We have plenty of Browns talk ahead. Dan Lobby, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer and Cleveland.com, will join us. We'll talk plenty about what Andrew Berry just had to say, as well as some draft things. Sports4CLE live from the NFL Scouting Combine. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day. 'Cause it's fun. So come on, great games wait for you and me. Ohio, lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
Sports4CLE continues from Radio Row at the NFL Scouting Combine. The prospects will be running around and posing in their shorts in a couple of days. But for now, it is head coaches, GMs meeting with the media. Todd Monken will be tomorrow. Andrew Berry was today. Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, Cleveland.com, Dan Lobby joins us. Dan, you look at it. There's never anything that surprises you, but what kind of got your attention from Andrew Berry today?
He was very non-committal on the quarterbacks, which I guess that's maybe not a huge surprise, but it was interesting that he just didn't really lay out any sort of plan for, what they're going to do at the quarterback position, what they might think about Shedeur Sanders, potentially Deshaun Watson. He left everything very wide open, and maybe that's because they just don't know yet. They don't know how the draft is going to unfold. They don't know if Malik Willis would want to come to Cleveland, for example. So I think there's still a lot of unknowns, and I think that's sort of what came across to me with Andrew Berry.
The other thing mentioned very briefly, Martin Emerson, and that one I was kind of like, that I didn't really expect, just said very much up in the air and to be determined. Martin Emerson does not have a contract. He's not under contract, was injured last year. Remember, third-round pick, so he didn't have the fifth-year option. That's where they're at with that.
Yeah, and he was a guy that was really good, I thought, especially in his second year. Third year maybe took a step back, but he had really kind of recommitted himself. He had changed his jersey number. He's wearing number 1 all of a sudden. And, the day he got hurt, he actually talked to us in a big scrum telling us about all the stuff he'd done to change his body, get in shape, and then he gets hurt and is lost for the year. And I think there was a scenario where he could have come back. There still is. But when they go out and they trade for Tyson Campbell, who's probably going to be your starting outside corner opposite Denzel Ward, that takes a job from Martin Emerson. Now, you can never have too many corners, and maybe this is a situation that plays out past the draft. Maybe they let him kind of sit out there for a little bit. If they don't get somebody they like in the draft, maybe they call him up and bring him back. But yeah, he was very non-committal about a guy that previously this team and this organization really liked.
All right, turn our attention to the draft. 6-24. People are it's multiples of 4 here with Browns first-round picks. What do you think they do? Do they go wide receiver? Do they do tackle? It's kind of interesting.
I think if they stay at 6, they're going to go tackle. I just think Andrew Berry, all things being equal, I think he likes to take bigger guys early in the draft. We saw it with Jed Wills. We saw it with Mason Graham. When he has a high pick, he values big guys. Now, that doesn't mean if there's an elite receiver that is just way better than any tackle on the board, grade-wise, then maybe he takes that receiver. Same with like a Caleb Downs. I think that's the really interesting debate we're going to have between now and that first round. If Caleb Downs is sitting there at 6, would they take him? Would they trade down and let somebody else take him? And that's the other possibility is maybe they want to get another pick for 27. And so, Andrew, one thing he never does at this thing is rule out trading down, and he did that again today. So if they stay at 6 and they make the pick, I would bet on tackle, unless there's just some other position with some player who's just graded way above anybody else.
If Caleb Downs is sitting there,
that might be the guy.
I said last year I didn't think they would take a defensive player high in the draft, and they took him the first 2 picks, and they turned out pretty good.
Yeah, well, and it's fascinating to hear these GMs talk. They get asked every year about best player versus need, and that would be a best player versus need. Now, I think they need a safety. I don't think they're desperate for a safety, but they could certainly use an upgrade of, I think Grant Delpit's very good, and they found a nice role for him. I think Rodney Hickman is fine. Caleb Downs, if he's Kyle Hamilton, or even more, if he's Ed Reed or Troy Polamalu or someone like that, how do you pass on that guy at number 6? And what if he ends up going to Cincinnati 4 picks later, and it's like, well, now he's going to terrorize you twice a year for 10 years. Normally, I would say you don't take a safety at 6, but if he's a difference maker like that, I think you have to consider it.
Well, think about that. Think about putting Ed Reed into the defense
right.
that you currently have.
Yeah, that's the thing. You're making you're making a strong unit stronger, and
right.
it's not adding somewhere where it's like, okay, now we've got. I think it was Eric DeCosta that was saying, well, you can't just take best player available because then you'll end up with 17 outside linebackers, right? Yeah. So obviously you have to be wary of that, but that wouldn't be the case with Caleb Downs. And this defense with Caleb Downs at safety, kind of running things on the back end, playing up near the line, whatever he can do, it would just go to a whole nother level.
So the other thing Andrew Berry talked about was rebuilding the offensive line. He kind of pointed to the Bears, who brought in, I think it was 4 new linemen. Can you see a scenario where that happens?
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting. That really stood out to me too. Just the way that they went out and knew they needed offensive line help across the board, and so they attacked it. And I think for Andrew, the way he's looking at this is, how do I attack this at all levels? So free agency, draft, even a trade if one comes up, because you just don't know. You really don't know anything about this line at this point. Wyatt Teller's already said goodbye. Jack Conklin's probably gone, and even if he comes back, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. You can't count on DeJuan Jones. You can't just plug him in. He's got to earn it, and then he's got to stay healthy. We don't know what Joel's going to do. We don't know what they're going to do at center, if Ethan Posick will be healthy and back, or if Luke Whippler will be healthy and good enough. So I could see a scenario where through free agency, the draft, the trade, we're looking at 4 or 5 new linemen potentially.
The wide receiver position is intriguing. If they don't go wide receiver at 6, what kind of wide receiver are you looking at 24?
I wish this guy would fall that far. And I know Lance Reisland, who's on this show all the time, really loves Mekhi Lemon.
Yeah.
I think that's a guy that would be really interesting at 24. I don't know if he gets down there. But you've got, Casey Concepcion is a guy that maybe could be in that range. I think they can, and this is another reason why I think I would lean tackle at 6. I think you can find good receivers at 24. You can find good receivers, early second round. And that's a position that has generally been successful on day 2 and 3. Not necessarily for Andrew Berry in his time as GM, but other teams have had success doing that. So I think that they can find guys in that second round, third round, even on day 3 who can come in and contribute to this football team. And a part of me wonders, too, did they believe that a fresh set of eyes and Todd Monken and a new offensive staff could maybe change things for a guy like a Ced Tillman or an Isaiah Bond or even a Jerry Jeudy?
Yeah, that's fair. They need a contested catch guy. Bond he can get deep. So you found the deep threat that you were looking for, and he looks like if you put it near him, he has a decent chance of catching it. Do you agree with a contested catch guy? Somebody that they can catch the ball and get positive yardage.
Yeah, and I think they maybe view Harold Fannin as that, but just from the receiver position, you've got to get. Maybe they saw Ced Tillman as being that guy, but again, he just hasn't been consistent, and he hasn't been able to stay on the field. So those are 2 things that you can't count on. So they do need to get a guy who can make plays in the red zone, make plays in the end zone. And to your point about Isaiah Bond, too, I really think he's a guy that I have circled as a Todd Monken favorite. Just everything he can do, all the ways you can get him the football. And this is a guy that came in so late last year. That's hard for a young guy to do, and everything he dealt with, of course, leading up to that. So I think with a full offseason, a new head coach, a guy that's going to maybe know how to use him a little better or be able to figure that out a little more, I'm really curious to see what he looks like.
Yeah, I'm with you, because Monken has the reputation in the MO of finding matchups and exploiting them. The old players over plays.
Yeah, and that's where in Isaiah Bond, he can be a difference maker because of his speed. Again, even if he can stay healthy, Ced Tillman, with his size, maybe he could be a difference maker. So the more kind of weird, funky things they can do, I think it was Mike Lombardi that used to always say you build your wide receiver room like a basketball team. So if you can kind of create different shapes, different sizes, and help your quarterback out by protecting him, now you can start to do some interesting things.
The other thing that came out, and it was not a real big news flash, but it makes a lot of sense. Dom Capers brought on to help Mike Rudenberg. Capers is a guy, head coaching experience, was a phenomenal defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and then this is just bringing in a guy with Mike Rutenberg who's never called an offense. It's just adding more experience, right? You had Jason Tarver in there who's been a DC before, so that helps. But just bringing in a guy who can... Kevin Stefanski used to always talk about having Bill Callahan next door to him and how valuable it was. Obviously a great O-line coach, but a guy that he could go knock on his door, help me out here. I've never been a head coach before. Help me out, guide me through this a little bit. That's what Dom Capers hopefully could be for Mike Rutenberg. Just a guy that, here's something I've never had to deal with when I was an assistant or a pass game coordinator or whatever. I'm going to go knock on Dom Capers' door and get some answers, and that's a pretty good guy to get answers from.
Yeah, you're setting up a young coordinator to be successful. That's good.
Exactly.
Do more of that.
Yeah, and that's something that I think generally they've tried to do, and I think that was something that Kevin was good at. I think Andrew has always tried to bring in people who can help young guys along, but that's such a big piece of the development process, is having veterans who have been there, who aren't circling, trying to take your job at some point, like having people you can trust, that you can lean on, and who can tell you, no, this is how it works and this is why.
Dan Lobby, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, Cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We will be back with more talk on the Browns here on Sports4CLE, live from the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, Indiana. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Sports4CLE continues from Radio Row at the NFL Scouting Combine, downtown Indianapolis, Indiana. That's a look at the big room where all of the national telecasts that have multi-cameras are set up. The podiums that the general managers and head coaches speak at are opposite those. Dan, Todd Monken will take the podium tomorrow afternoon. I think it's 1 o'clock. What do you expect to hear from him? He's pretty blunt. You might get something out of that.
This is the first time I've said this in probably 6 years. I'm kind of excited to hear from the head coach of this football team to see what he's going to say, because who knows? He is, I don't know if wild card is the right word, but I think there is a little bit of a wild card to him, and he's not a guy that's going to sugarcoat things. I just go back to his introductory presser, and I think he was sending a message not just to the defensive coaches that were there watching it, and us in the media. I think he was sending a message to Andrew Berry and the Haslams when he said, I wasn't scheming for Jim Schwartz. I wasn't trying to block Jim Schwartz. And so I think Todd Monken is a guy that will send those sorts of messages. So it'll be fun because, one, he'll say anything, and two, he's had a chance to kind of study this roster now and probably form some opinions. And I think he'll give us some things. I think he'll tell us a little bit what he thinks about the quarterback, about the receivers, and about the rest of the offensive weapons.
Yeah, it's going to be real interesting. I get a gut feeling that they're going to bring a veteran quarterback in somehow, some way. I could be wrong, but what I think is Todd Monken's about my age. If I got my shot at a dream job, I'm not attaching myself to a quarterback unless I'm sold on it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. 60 years old, he knows this is it. This is his probably only shot to do this job. So he's got to be convinced that there's either a quarterback in the building or that there's a clear plan within the next 12 months to have a quarterback in the building who's going to win for this football team. So I don't know who that veteran could be. Again, could it be Malik Willis? Maybe. Kirk Cousins doesn't get me that excited.
No.
If Derek Carr comes back, I don't know, maybe. But I do agree with you that Todd Monken is not going to sit here and say, you know what, it's fine. We don't need a quarterback for another couple years. He's going to need a quarterback, and he's going to need one fast.
And in fairness, to the quarterbacks that are on the roster, an improved offensive line, a playmaker on the outside, boost up the quarterback play dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, that offensive line is like the engine. It makes, if it's good, it makes everything else better. And I think we saw that going all the way back to 2020. Even in, 2014, when they started off 7-4, they were doing that behind a really great offensive line. So that's where Shedeur Sanders can thrive. That's where maybe a Deshaun Watson can find a little something of that. I don't think he'll ever be the player he was in Houston again, but maybe he can find some of that magic again. Or we never talk about poor Dylan Gabriel. I don't know. Maybe it's Dylan Gabriel. I doubt it. But, yeah, I think I could see Todd wanting to look at one of those guys and be intrigued by one of those guys, but he's going to need a solid plan B.
Defensively, Mike Rudenberg takes over a unit that was really good. I got to believe anytime you change a coordinator, there's got to be a little bit of I'm concerned. I won't lie. I'm concerned.
Well, yeah, because we've never seen him do it, too. There's no history there. That doesn't mean he's going to be bad, but we just don't know for sure. And I think the hard part is he's got to get buy-in from guys that maybe, I don't want to say don't want to buy in, but guys that are going to kind of be like, wait a second, you're not Jim Schwartz. And that's why I think having a lot of this staff back, you talk about Brandon Lynch and Ephraim Banda and Jason Tarver, guys that all got promotions, and Jacques Césaire is still here for Myles Garrett and that defensive lineman. At least you have those guys who can sort of say, hey, it's going to be okay. We like this Rutenberg guy. He's going to do a lot of what Jim did. He's going to be even better in some of these areas. So that's really the key, is getting buy-in from those guys. And the rest, I think, will take care of itself. But you're right. We've never seen him call a defense. We'll see if he can do it.
Yeah, and the flip side of it is things are going to be different. They're going to be different. He's not Jim Schwartz. He shouldn't try to be Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, and it would be a mistake if he did. He's got to run the Mike Rutenberg scheme. So he can have some of the same traits. He can have some of the same ideas and styles, but he's got to make his mark on this defense and do it quickly.
How many linemen and how offensive heavy is this draft?
I think it's pretty offensive heavy. I know we talked in that last segment about, do you take a defensive player at 6? Maybe, but I don't think you're going to take like 10 defensive players. I think Andrew has made it clear, and I'll give him credit. He's talked pretty honestly about this roster and where he sees it, and the idea of where they are kind of in this rebuild. And it's not like a 1-31 rebuild, but they understand. He even said today they're probably still a year away from really going all in free agency. So I think he understands that, and to his credit, he was also honest with us when they fired Kevin Stefanski. We're going to invest on the offensive side of the ball this offseason. So there's going to be a lot. So even if it's Caleb Downs at number 6, it's still going to be a ton of offense on this draft day, and probably in free agency too.
So a lot of national people think there could be a boatload of trades. It seems like more and more the NFL is kind of going down that path with trades.
Yeah, and I think Andrew has always been one of those GMs that I think takes his cues a little bit from NBA GMs, and that's go make deals. Don't wait for a guy to hit free agency. Go get a guy if you can. And whenever he stockpiles a third round or a day 3 pick, I always just kind of circle it. Like, that could be a pick that he uses to go trade for an Amari Cooper or a Jerry Jeudy or a Zadarius Smith. Is he going to make a huge move like that this offseason? We'll see. Again, that it sort of depends on where the player is in their career and how they fit over the next 4 to 5 years as opposed to just this year. But he will try to make trades, and he loves acquiring those day 3 picks to pile those things together and throw at a team if they have a veteran they don't want to pay.
Could you see them finding a way to acquire a veteran quarterback via trade? I don't even know who it would be. I mean, there was crazy talk about C.J. Stroud. I can't imagine that would be the case.
Yeah, and the thing about C.J. Stroud is it seems like, okay, yeah, obviously you go trade for C.J. Stroud if you could, but then you also have to ask yourself, oh, wait, why don't the Texans want him anymore? So that's something I would do. Now, I think Nick Caserio kind of shut that down today, but you never know. This is lying season.
Right.
So it's something I would do, but then you also, like I said, you have to ask, well, why don't they want him? And you have to go through that with every veteran quarterback. But I think Andrew is going to turn over every stone. He's going to look everywhere he can look to find a guy, and if it's in the trade market and it's somebody he really likes, I think he would do it.
We heard what he said about free agency. What do you expect? I mean, I would imagine the thing that I really want to know, what do George Warhop and Todd Monken think of Tyler Linderbaugh? Because if they think this is a guy that kind of, we don't know his personality. They probably aren't going to tell us his personality. If they go and make him a decent size offer, they want that guy to set the tone for what this offensive line becomes.
Yeah, and I think you and I were standing there when Eric DeCosta today said they made a market-setting offer for Tyler Linderbaugh, which is basically saying, hey, we're ready to make you the highest-paid center in football. So if he gets to the market, the Browns have to try and do the same. They have to basically say, we will make you the highest-paid center in football. And I think when you look at sort of the DNA of this team and how it's being built, they're going to invest in O-line. They have Quinshon Judkins. They hired a former offensive lineman as their offensive coordinator. I think they're going to run the football. And then you look at the quarterback situation, too. That plays into it as well. But I think they're going to come out and try to run the football.
Yeah, and that goes back all the way back to last segment. If they stay at 6, sure sounds like it's going to be an offensive lineman.
Yeah, you take a road grader of a tackle, or I don't think they would take a guard that high, but he gets 24. Does the Penn State guy come into play
if he's there? Absolutely.
That's where you start getting into, do you take 2 or 3 offensive linemen? So, I think it's going to be I don't know if I want to say run-heavy scheme, but I think it's going to be a scheme built around the run game, just based on who they have, what they're trying to do, and their quarterback situation.
So let me throw out a goofy idea. Tyler Huntley, who was here, played with Todd Monken and actually played pretty well for the Ravens. Is that somebody that kind of is an under-the-radar guy?
I think he could come in here. Now, I don't know if he could compete to start, but, he would compete to start. I don't know if he could win the starting job, but he's a guy you'd love to have in your building just to be one of your advocates and be one of the guys who's saying, hey, this is the Todd Monken offense. This is what we do. This is why Todd's awesome. This is why I love playing for him. Like, having guys like that in the building, in that quarterback room, is a really valuable thing to have. And then, look, maybe he does win the job. I don't know. With the state of this quarterback room, anything's possible.
Well, he played well when he played in relief of Lamar Jackson. If you go out and get a young guy that you're going to play, and that's the kind of guy you need behind him.
Yeah, and it's never bad to take shots on guys like that. Again, we talk about Malik Willis a lot. He doesn't have a huge sample size, so there's risk in that too. Maybe it's not as risky as a Tyler Huntley, but that's a risky move if you go out and pay him. He has to be your starter if you do that. At least with a Tyler Huntley, you could bring him back and he could compete. He doesn't necessarily have to be your starter.
What do you got going on the rest of the week? You're going to be here with the Combine.
Here all the way till Saturday.
Where can people find you?
So Cleveland.com/Browns is where me and Mary Kay and Ashley, we're going to be writing stuff all week. We'll be having the Orange and Brown Talk podcast as well on all the podcast platforms. And we put our videos up the same place you watch this show and the same place you see clips from this show at Cleveland Browns on Cleveland.com. We put video versions of our pod up. So all the usual places.
Sounds good. Dan, appreciate the time. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Dan Lobby, make sure you check him out. Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, Cleveland.com. Good, insightful coverage of the Browns. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Andrew Siciliano, Browns play-by-play voice, will continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE from the NFL Scouting Combine on Radio Row. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little flag in your day. Put a little flag in your day.
Sports4CLE continues from the NFL Scouting Combine on Radio Row, and we're pleased to be joined by the radio play-by-voice of the Cleveland Browns, Andrew Siciliano. Andrew, appreciate the time.
Of course, Dave.
Busy off-season. Todd Monken, I kind of like the hire. I'm just curious your thoughts.
I do as well. I know it probably wasn't the big headline-grabbing, sexy hire, so to speak, but he is a highly respected coach. He's going to hold people accountable. He's a very good offensive coach, regardless of where he has coached and the systems he has been in. He's not like, hey, this is my way, we're going to run offense this way. He ran a lot of RPOs, obviously in Baltimore, Georgia. Georgia won national championships with him. A lot of running backs, a lot of tight ends, and then you go back all the way to Brandon Weeden. Remember at Oklahoma State? They ran a lot of air raid stuff, so he's not married to one scheme. And I think there's like a Bruce Arians analogy where later in life, a guy that everyone knew should have been a head coach finally gets that shot, and I think he's going to do well.
The other thing is, seems to favor matchups and players. Find a matchup
Absolutely.
you can exploit, and then exploit it until the defense can stop it.
Yeah, that's called good coaching. It's not, like I said, it's not my way or the highway. It's
Right.
like we're going to take what we have and we're going to try to build a winning team and a winning system. And I think we all know, like, the defense has been there. You got to score some points. And you look at the playoffs last year, whether it's Denver or Houston or even Seattle for that matter. I mean, they weren't scoring 40 points a game. You just give me 20, 21 points a game, and it's a different conversation with this team.
You look at all that they need, being the Browns on offense, and nobody's saying they don't need a lot. You need some wide receiver help. You need a lot of offensive line help. You could use clarity on a quarterback.
Sure.
Can you get a good chunk of that or all of that in one offseason?
It's hard, but it is doable. You got to hit on 6 and then 24 and the pick early, I believe 39, 30, I believe, don't quote me on it, the pick high in the second round, as they did last year. They nailed those picks last year. You got to nail them again. Have to sprinkle in some free agency as well, because even though you can't overspend, you got to spend wisely. Malik Collins was a great addition last year in free agency, and people always say, well, you can't win with free agents. You know who spent the most money in free agency last year? The New England Patriots. It can work if you pick the right guys.
And the right guys aren't usually the guys that are going to make $40 million a year. It's guys that fit what you want to do offensively. Right. And it's usually younger guys in free agency.
It's hard with free agents because, listen, if they were that good, generally speaking, the team keeps them. Yeah. There's always different circumstances. Like, for example, take Tyler Linderbaum, who Todd Monken had in Baltimore. He's going to hit free agency as a center. And the reason you can't tag him is because that centers get the same as offensive tackles.
Right.
If you use the tag. So therefore you'd have to pay him $30 million. It's not going to be that way. He is one of those rare free agents where you're young and you're very talented. But a lot of the other choices, you're not necessarily shopping on the top shelf.
So a guy like Linderbaum, who both George Warhop, offensive line coach, and Todd Monken know well, is that the kind of guy that if they feel, and we don't know how they feel about him because they're not going to tell us, but if they feel he's a guy that can kind of set the tone for that position group, are you willing to spend a little bit more on that guy?
I'm not ready to say yet that is the path. I would also look at the assets that you do have on the offensive line, and there's only so many guys under contract. But one of those guys is Luke Whippler, who is still playing on his rookie contract, former Buckeye, who finally got in last year and got some, how many ever games he got to start at the end of the year. Considering your other limitations, I would love to see Luke Whippler on a personal level and a professional level get that shot next year. So I don't know that spending a lot of money on a center is necessarily in the cards, but that's above my pay grade.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you want to hear? What do you expect to hear? What do you want to hear from Todd Monken when he meets with the media here at the Combine tomorrow?
A lot of what we heard already, which is his vision, holding people accountable. He's a pretty funny guy. If you've seen his interview, ClevelandBrowns.com, with my partner Nathan Zagura, he's direct and he's funny and he's got stories. But at the same time, behind this curtain here, you have all the coaches doing their podium and GMs. You're probably not going to get
a whole lot. Yeah,
a whole lot, because 2 weeks from today, free agency begins.
Right.
You're not going to throw your cards necessarily on the table.
Let's talk a little bit about Joel Bitonio. They pushed back the date. Is that a sign they're trying to figure something out? It just gives them more time. They're
it
not
gives them
rushed
more
into
time.
anything.
Yeah, obviously, if they had their answer, they wouldn't have had to push it back. I would love to see Joel come back. I still think he's playing at a level that he should come back, but that remains to be seen. He has always said he wants to retire a Brown. Hopefully, we get one more year.
As you look at the draft, which we'll see some of these prospects later in the week that would intrigue everybody, being the offensive linemen, the wide receivers, even the quarterbacks. What do you get a sense, wide receiver, offensive tackle, will free agency give you a better idea of what happens at 6 and 24 at least?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the NFL calendar. Like, you have all these mock drafts right now. All right, well, we haven't even gotten through free agency. They're inevitably going to be, and not just the Browns, all 32 teams, players who you didn't see getting cut between now and the start of free agency. You might go spend big money, whichever team, on player X. Well, you're not taking that position now in the first round. Or you can get thrown the curveball, where the Falcons 2 years ago spent all this money on Kirk Cousins and then took a quarterback in the top 10. It's hard to really do those draft boards until you get through free agency, but I think it's safe to say we all agree it would be great to see the Browns go offense at 6 and 24.
You talk about the offense, defense, new defensive coordinator. It has to affect the defense some? I don't know how much.
It's certainly going to affect the defense.
Yeah.
I mean, you got a new guy in charge, but Mike Rudeberg has come from a system very similar to what we've run here the last couple of years. I think the news today that Dom Capers coming in as a second set of eyes is huge as well for a first-time play caller and coordinator. The talent is there, and that's another thing that I think you'll hear Todd Monken reiterate, as he did when he had his introductory press conference in Berea, and that is, listen, we have talent in this room. I'm not going to do anything to get in the way of that talent going and doing what they have done so well the last few years.
Yeah, again, that speaks to really good coaching. What do
Yes,
you guys do well?
sure.
Do what they ask them to do what they do well. Don't try to necessarily improve what you think they need to improve on.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, score 21 points a game and the defense continues to do its job, then this team's going to win games. But there's a lot of roster juggling that simply has to happen, because the only thing that's consistent in this league is change.
You mentioned Dom Capers. That's a pretty good set of eyes to have on a defense.
Absolutely, and especially for a first-time coordinator to have not only former head coach but a former coordinator, and on that side of the ball, that is going to help.
That's setting up a young first-time coordinator to be successful.
Correct.
What do you, when you look at wide receiver position on the offensive side of the ball, what kind of wide receiver do you think makes sense to add to this offense?
I'm going to give you a cop-out answer and say anyone that could score touchdowns. But it's not. It's all. You need someone to throw the ball and you need someone to block. So it's not just, hey,
you're
we
right.
need, like, the lack of wide receiver or lack of production, rather, at wide receiver is the reason why this team didn't score enough points. There are a lot of factors that go into play. But, yeah, they need some dynamic playmakers. I don't think that is a secret.
Before I let you go, it's pretty evident from the very beginning, different personality at head coach.
Sure.
Would you agree? And you know what?
Yes.
It's kind of interesting to see how the players will respond to that.
It is. I think NFL head coaches, and by the way, I love Kevin. This is a just general rule here about hiring in sports or leadership in any industry. Very often you see maybe not the opposite of what you had, but a reaction to what was there, and go a little bit different. They're both offensive coaches.
Yep.
A little bit different personalities. I really don't know Todd Monken yet. But, yeah, I'm curious to see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm with you. And, the thing is, if you hire the exact same personality of head coach, why'd you make the change?
Well, I would also... Personality is only part of it. I would also say, and everyone will tell you this, the Kevin Stefanski that you saw on the podium was not always the guy you saw behind the scenes, right?
Absolutely.
You're more buttoned up per se when you're on the podium than you are in these kind of interactions or to the team. So I think it's unfair to say, Kevin, who didn't reveal a lot on the podium, that was just part of the way he thought the team should be handled, was the same guy behind the scenes, because he was not.
No, that's absolutely fair. But again, if you're even the persona sometimes is what.
Sure.
I mean, you look at it. It's not like Kevin Stefanski forgot how to coach. Let's be clear about that.
Not at all.
Just
Kevin's a good coach, and I think he'll do well in Atlanta.
Right, yeah,
and I hope he
exactly.
does do well in Atlanta. I'm rooting for him.
Sometimes change is needed just because the voice changes.
I understand. Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's life. Yeah.
All right, I lied. One more
Okay.
thing before I let you go. Jim Schwartz leaving. I certainly can understand. I think anybody who's been passed over
Again,
for a job
that's life. Yeah.
for a job they really wanted could understand that.
Absolutely. I do. I get it. I mean, unfortunately, you would also, there is another world in which you would love to have seen it work out.
Right.
But yes, there's that aspect to it as well.
Andrew Siciliano, I appreciate the time very much.
My pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Andrew Siciliano, he is the play-by-play voice of the Cleveland Browns. We will have more Browns coverage, Sports4CLE, from the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Sports4CLE continues from the NFL Scouting Combine, Indianapolis, Indiana, Radio Row, and we are pleased to be joined by Dalton Wasserman, data analyst and the co-host of the College Football Show on PFF. Dalton, appreciate it. Good to have you sitting next to me instead of across the state in Zoom.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about no Zoom calls, nothing. It's always better in person, right? Especially in an electric atmosphere like this. Everything's buzzing. We're getting all the news and notes of the day and everything. So it's just good to do one of these in person for sure. Really feel like part of the show now.
All right. Offensive line or wide receiver at 6 and 24 for the Browns. What's your sense there?
Most mocks I've been doing for the Browns, it's been one of each, right? And it could be in different orders. It's definitely going to depend on the availability. There's rumors that at both offensive lineman and wide receiver going possibly, say, third to Arizona on the offensive line. The Giants could go either way there at 5. So with the Browns picking at 6, I think it's very much going to be about what is on the board, right? Is it somebody like Francis Mauigoa from Miami, the right tackle? Is it, a receiver like a Carnell Tate from Ohio State, a Mekhi Lemon from USC, Jordan Tyson from Arizona State? Could go either way, and it's really going to depend on how they feel, too, about the depth of the class and what's going to be available to them at 24. So I think the two picks are very much interconnected when it comes to, okay, what order are we going to do this in and who are we going to pick up?
Who do you like? Who do you have as your top couple wide receivers, top couple tackles?
So the top 3 wide receivers to me are pretty clear. It's in some order: Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon, and Jordan Tyson. And they all have very different skill sets. I think they're very equally talented. Tyson obviously has some injury concerns, but he's very, very good when he's healthy. Lemon more of a shifty slot type. And Carnell Tate, as all the Ohio State fans back in Ohio know, is a great vertical threat, right? So it just kind of depends on what Todd Monken is looking to add to this offense when it comes to receiver. And then I think there's 2 pretty clear top tackles in this draft for me: Francis Mauigoa from Miami and Spencer Fano from Utah. I think Mauigoa is a little more of a developed pass protector right now. They're both really good run blockers. Fano really is an awesome run blocker who could use a little more strength in pass protection, but both very, very good players with high potential.
So if, say, Carnell Tate isn't there, could you see the Browns taking Mekhi Lemon as high as 6?
I think so. I think, honestly, other than, and we'll see what he officially measures in at, but other than being a little bit undersized, maybe 2 or 3 inches shorter than, the usual number 1 receivers, I think he's as skilled as any receiver in this class, and really any player in this class. The route running is outstanding. The after-the-catch ability is outstanding. And even being undersized as he is, maybe 5'10", 5'11", and 200 pounds, really good in contested situations as well. He's tough as nails. He's tough to tackle. I mean, just everything about his makeup says he's a really darn good football player. He's just a little bit below average size. If you can overcome that, and he did at USC for sure, and winning the Biletnikoff and all that, he can absolutely be a really good player in this league.
All right, so let's turn our attention later in that first round. So those are the guys that basically would go 6. What are you looking at 24 relative to wide receiver? What are you looking at 24 relative to offensive line?
I think the names at wide receiver at 24 are probably going to be guys like Denzel Boston from Washington, who reminds me a lot of Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State last year, early second-round pick for the Houston Texans. Omar Cooper from Indiana has been getting a ton of buzz. He's a little bit like Lemon. I don't know that he's quite as explosive as far as straight-line speed, but he's a little bit like that as a slot weapon who can break tackles. Casey Concepcion from Texas A&M, also you get him with explosive plays on offense and one of the best punt returners in this draft as well. And then when you look at offensive linemen, a little more fluid there. I think there's going to be a second wave of offensive linemen that go just, maybe outside the top 15, and we'll see how urgent teams are with it when you talk about a guy like Monroe Freeling, the tackle from Georgia, or even I think a player I really like at guard is Oregon's Emmanuel Pregnon. I think he could sneak into the first round and be a rock-solid starting guard on day 1 for somebody. But I think there's a very interesting run that's going to happen with that second group of offensive linemen. We'll see where it starts. It might start with the Browns at 24.
Could you see is the interior line a little bit stronger in the late first round, early second, and third round than maybe the tackles?
I would agree with that, especially even as you get into some of the day 2 picks, guys who are going to go in round 2 and 3. I think the interior offensive line, especially, we'll wait and see which of the tackles might end up playing guard eventually, but I think you have 2 guys that really stand out at the top of the interior class. Vengai Ioane from Penn State, and like I said, Emmanuel Pregnon from Oregon I really like. But when you talk about if you're looking for a new center, a guy like Connor Lew from Auburn or Jake Slaughter from Florida could be had on day 2. I think the interior class really starts to heat up beyond those first two guys, really probably in the mid to late second round and beyond there.
Who are some guys there that would make some sense?
You're talking on day two?
Yeah.
I think if you're, again, I mean, for the Browns, it's almost easier because you could go any of them, right? They're replacing the entire offensive line. So, again, Connor Lew and Jake Slaughter, two really good centers that are like Chase Basantis from Texas A&M, a former tackle who kicked to the inside at A&M. You can really tell he's got tackle's feet and he's sound in pass protection, right? I mean, you have so many interior guys in there that you think about. And just Jalen Farmer from Kentucky is a guy who's got a lot of hype lately. Billy Schrouth from Notre Dame is a good rock-solid guard. I think could turn into a starter as a probable round 3 pick. So plenty of interior options. And again, I think for the Browns, just wait and see where the board falls. And I'm curious to see what Todd Monken, which guys he thinks will fit their system the best.
When you look at 6 and 24, could you see the Browns trading back out of 6, or is there not likely to be people that want to trade up?
I think it really heavily depends on how the Browns' board falls, right? Who are their favorite players really at the top? And I do think it is an issue right now in this class, being that it's not filled with a lot of blue-chip talent at premier positions, especially offensively. Do you want to trade back first and foremost, say if Amau Anoa or somebody like that is on the board? And what are these other teams trading up for? That's been the one part when I do mock drafts right now that's hard to project, is who is trading up for what? Because I think after maybe the first 8 or 10 players in this class, I think the talent is very, very similar for a long time. Once we get down even into the second and middle of the third round, I think a lot of the talent's very similar. So it's going to be very opinionated team to team as far as who wants their guy. But I definitely think a trade down could be a scenario for them, especially as a team with so many needs at these two positions we've been talking about, finding that quantity to get multiple bodies in there.
Do you sense that teams will likely not be as willing to trade first-round picks next year? Because the projected every year we hear it's a really good quarterback class. One of these years it's destined to be a really good quarterback class, and it might be next year.
For sure. I mean, we don't get them every year, and this year makes it even harder to project those trade-ups because we have Fernando Mendoza going first, and then a whole lot of question marks. Quarterback is arguably maybe the weakest group that we have of any position unit in this class, right? So I think especially when you don't have trade-ups for quarterbacks, you're looking for teams that they must look at a certain guy as the ideal fit, the guy that they need to have for their football team. So, I think you mentioned it, those 2027 picks, at least, you know me, I watch a lot of college football. I think those could be really, really valuable come next year. And you've already seen teams like, say, the New York Jets stacking up. They have 3 first-round picks next year already. I think that's going to continue if teams can try to trade back. But, again, it depends who's trading up for what.
So when you look at the QB2 in this draft, we know Mendoza's QB1. Is it Ty Simpson, and what do you see in Simpson?
I believe it's Simpson. I mean, I think you're looking at a guy, he's a coach's son. He really knows what he's looking at out there on the field. I think he's got an above-average arm when his feet are set. And, look, he had to deal with some injuries, later in the season. He played on a team that really could not run the football at all. That was Alabama's biggest weakness. So he was really dropping back and having to carry that offense a lot and see the field in drop-back situations. And ran a little hot and cold the second half of the year, especially when teams started sending pressure and really heating him up in the pocket. So I do want to see some better answers for pressure. My belief on Simpson is he is QB2, but I would love for him to go to a situation where he could sit for a year, right? I think about Pittsburgh if Aaron Rodgers comes back for one more run, right? I think about the Rams and maybe getting to sit behind Matthew Stafford and, Sean McVay really working on Simpson's footwork. Those would be the ideal situations. If he had to start week 1, would he be capable with the right supporting cast? Sure, but I would like to see him sit for a year.
Does it quarterbacks that have only played I think it's 15 with him, 15 starts, that would concern me relative to having to play him early. Is that kind of what you were getting at?
Yeah, I agree with that a little bit. Now, he did get to sit at Alabama for a while and really learn behind some really good players, right, that came before him with the Crimson Tide and under a couple really good coaches in Nick Saban and Kalen DeBoer. But I also think part of that sometimes depends on the player, too, right? Again, he's a coach's son who really, you can tell he's a kid who studies the tape and sees things pre-snap the way that you want him to see. I think the biggest thing with that experience, again, is having answers for pressure and having answers for things maybe you don't anticipate, right? When you have to improvise or when you have to just make adjustments on the fly, that experience maybe could have used another year. And I wouldn't have blamed him if he stayed in school for another year, even if he had to transfer. But in this class, if you feel really good about possibly being a first-round pick and being the second quarterback taken, I get it. But those are the things he's going to have to work on, is just making those adjustments on the fly.
What skills do you look for in a quarterback that goes late in the draft? So it's clearly a guy that you're trying to develop. What do you look for that makes you think this guy could actually develop.
I would say the three big things that I look for watching any quarterback that's projected to go in any round. Number one is footwork, right? It's hard to play quarterback in the NFL if you come into it and your footwork's a mess. We've seen this with other guys. I think about an Anthony Richardson even, obviously, who went 4th overall, and the footwork just has never been fixed. There's certain guys where it is an issue and it affects the rest of your game. Number two, accuracy, right? You can't miss easy throws, right? And we see certain quarterbacks in the league where you just miss too many easy throws and it stalls your offense, right? 2nd and 7 should have been a first down, ends up 3rd and 7 because you missed an easy one, right? And third is processing, right? Can they see defenses? Can they see safeties rotating? Can they make those pre-snap adjustments, right? I think those are three things you always look for. And look, guys later in the draft, they might be really good in one or two of those areas and be severely lacking in another. And it just depends on the coaching staff and what plan they have to develop any of those. But those are the three traits that I look at all the time: footwork, accuracy, processing.
Dalton Wasserman, data analyst from PFF, also co-host of the College Football Show, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We will return one more segment here on Sports4CLE from the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, Indiana. We'll be right back.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
Sports4CLE continues from Radio Row at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, Indiana. We continue talking draft with PFF's data analyst and co-host of the College Football Show, Dalton Wasserman. Dalton, let's talk a little bit about some of the guys you really like in this upcoming draft. Regardless of position, guys you look at and go, man, this guy can play.
Yeah, I'll tell you, to me, this is a very heavy defensive draft, and I think there's so many studs on that side of the ball who could go day 2 and early day 3. I think about a guy who's a bit undersized but a great football player, D'Angelo Pons, for the last couple years in college football, the cornerback from Indiana, outstanding football player, right? He's just smaller. We'll be curious to see what his official weight is, especially here at the Combine, but his skills are as good as any cornerback in this game, in this class, I should say. Guy who might go late in the first round or early in the second round, the safety Dylan Thieneman from Oregon. Again, over the last 3 years, one of my favorite players in college football. And then I think about some of the guys I saw out there at the Senior Bowl. I think about linebacker Kyle Lewis from Pittsburgh has really made an impression, and I think more athletic players like him really have a fit now at that kind of second level of these defenses, that linebacker safety hybrid. So I think there's a lot of really good athletes. The secondary class is outstanding, and the defensive line class, I think especially as a whole, maybe all the way through round 5 or 6, I think that's the deepest unit in this entire class.
Where's their value? So guys that pay attention to this always look at the value is, here. Where do you see that in this draft?
I really think it's in the trenches on the defensive line. I wouldn't shock me if we saw teams kind of slow play the first round a little bit when it came to defensive line, because there's so much depth. There's going to be starting caliber players in round 2 and round 3. There's run stuffing, big nose tackles if you need them. There's situational pass rushers. I mean, you're going to be, if you need defensive line help, this is absolutely your class. I think it was Elliott Wolf, the general manager for the Patriots, talking about this earlier. He goes, yeah, we have a need at edge rusher, but we certainly have a lot of options in this class to work with. It's kind of good that our need lines up with the strength of this class. So I think defensive line, to me, again, I think it's the best position group, and I think teams that need more pass rushers or run defenders, they're really going to be in luck this year.
All right, let's flip that around. What are some of the positional scarcity in this draft? What's the positional scarcity?
The two that stand out to me, both on the offensive side of the ball, I think are quarterback and running back. I think last year we had a great running back class. We've seen good quarterback classes recently, but quarterback beyond Mendoza, who I don't even know that he's as sure a thing as, say a Joe Burrow or a Trevor Lawrence. He's not on that class of prospect, but he's going first. But there's really not many answers right now when it comes to the depth of the quarterback class. We mentioned Simpson as QB2, and I think that's right. But you talk about guys with a lot of question marks like Garrett Nussmeier, like Drew Aller. Cole Payton from North Dakota State is getting a little bit of buzz from scouts just because he's got really good physical tools. And then I think at running back, it's kind of the same situation where you have Jeremiah Love, who is by far and away the best back in this class. And RB2 might be his teammate, Jadarian Price, also. So, it's him, it's Emmett Johnson from Nebraska, I like Jonah Coleman from Washington. There's good players, but I don't think you're going to get the early run of running backs that you did last year. Those two positions, and I know it's hard to deal with because it's like those are the flashy positions, those are the sexy ones, everyone wants to see it, but I just think those are the two of the weakest groups in this class this year.
So under the radar guys, some guys late in the draft that you think could pop, that you kind of look at and go, man, I don't know why. I just think this guy can play.
I definitely think this is one we talked about on a previous show. The Western Michigan edge rusher, Nadeem Tucker, I think could be an early day 3 guy who could come in and really play a good role in a situational type role as a pass rusher, maybe 20 snaps a game. I look later, this wide receiver class, I think that's probably the best position group offensively. I think about guys that could go anywhere from round 3 to 5, and there's all different flavors. I think about speedsters like Kevin Coleman from Missouri. Brennan Thompson from Mississippi State might be the fastest player here. Look out for him in the 40-yard dash. Then you got some bigger guys, right, like Malachi Fields from Notre Dame, like Ted Hurst from Georgia State. He's another one who could really blow up this combine at his size. So I think the wide receiver class, right in those mid-rounds, that's really going to be a solid unit where there's a lot of talent to work with.
When you look at guys like that, how important is the combine for a guy like a guy from Georgia State? The mid-majors, if you will.
I think it's big because one thing for, say, Group of 5 and FCS guys to try to figure out is how does their athleticism really translate beyond that level of competition, right? Because you might be, say, like Ted Hurst, you might be the best athlete in the Sun Belt, but that's different from playing in the SEC or the Big Ten or one of the Power 4 schools, right? And he doesn't get a lot of opportunities to play the Ohio States and schools like that, right? So I think it can be big just to see how his athletic tools match up, especially next to all the other competitors that are here, right? I think that's big, and if the athletic tools do play up, then it makes you take a second look in the film and go, okay, this can translate, right? Then the game in pads translates. The route running can translate because we can see now that we have the testing results, okay, it matches up, and this guy can play athletically at an NFL level.
What are the biggest questions that you think will get answered this week at the Combine?
Couple. I mean, there's a handful. I think there's some big stories near the top of the draft. There's always with linemen and things like that going to be the arm length questions. We did it with Will Campbell on the offensive side last year. We're still doing it. And then Reuben Bain is certainly going to be a big one. He's going to be a noteworthy one when it comes to the arm length argument and how high should he go. I think if it comes in at a solid number, above 31 inches is generally the cutoff. I think he could go as high as number 2 to the Jets. I think Ty Simpson, like you mentioned before, is a big story. We have not seen him throw since the end of the season. He wasn't at the Senior Bowl or Shrine Bowl or anything like that, wasn't healthy. And then a name to look out for too, Jermod McCoy, the cornerback from Tennessee, didn't play at all this year with a torn ACL, could be a top 15 pick if he comes out here and shows in drills that he's healthy. I think there's some specific players when it comes to medicals and just trying to figure out, okay, are they healthy enough? And then, of course, do the measurables play up? But some big names really to watch out here.
Simpson's going to throw, which is kind of out of the ordinary, right, for a top 2, 3, 4 quarterback here.
Yeah, for sure. It's certainly not ordinary. You're absolutely right on that. And Fernando Mendoza won't throw because he's locked in as the first pick, and I don't blame him one bit for that if you're locked in. But Ty Simpson, not nearly as locked in to say a first-round pick as he could be because, again, he got hurt that final game against Indiana in the playoff. He didn't get to go throw at the Senior Bowl or the Shrine Bowl, the All-Star circuit, and, rumor has it, too. It'll be curious. I think he might have weighed in at 210 pounds or so. Apparently, he had lost a lot of weight late in the season with some sort of illness too. So if he goes out here and he throws like he's healthy, and again, I think his arm is kind of underrated, he could really boost his stock into being solidified as the second quarterback taken.
Dalton Wasserman, data analyst for PFF, as well as the host of the College Football Show. Appreciate the time, the insight, as always. Great stuff. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it, as always, Dave. Thank you.
Dalton Wasserman, make sure you check him out. Pro Football Focus, co-host of the College Football Show. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow from the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, Indiana on Radio Row. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.